Now, in a court filing yesterday, pay attention to this. Lawyers for the suspected shooter in the Club Q shooting, Anderson Aldrich, say their client is non-binary and uses they-them pronouns. The crew over at CNN, however, isn't buying it.
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that's not anything that we had heard from his background. You know, people have been looking into his background. And I don't know if anybody here, are you guys lawyers? I mean, you know, I don't know if, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that's what he's now saying.
It sounds like they're trying to prepare a defense against a hate crimes charge. That's the least of his problems, legally speaking, but it looks like they're trying to build some kind of sympathy or at least confusion on the question of whether or not this was purely motivated by hate.
It's not just CNN. Some online sleuths are unconvinced as well after one of Aldrich's neighbors told the Daily Beast they witnessed Aldrich frequently using anti-gay slurs. Twitter user Alejandra Caraballo wrote, all indications from people who knew the shooter were that he was violent and homophobic. The identification as non-binary is almost certainly a troll. So I looked at that Daily Beast article, and I was actually not totally convinced by that necessarily. Look, it could well be the case that what people are saying here is accurate, that he is not non-binary, that he kind of made this up on the spot, or his attorneys did as a defense against hate crimes. Sure, could be the case. Could be the case that he's extremely homophobic, but it's not, as far as like in the Daily Beast story, they only had one person saying that, and the person didn't actually even say that he was known for homophobia, just that he had used the F word slur a lot, which is also something I know like that a lot of gay people use too, so you know, sort of kind of reclaimy way.
Well,
so who knows? But the Daily Beast is in my view, has become a very sloppy kind of journalistic outlet, and so after I looked at it, I was like, well, there isn't actually a lot of evidence there of that. Could be the case, just didn't see a lot of evidence.
I agree with the was it CNN correspondent there who said that the hate crime charge, any hate crime charge, is the least of his concerns. You know, he killed 5 people. Yeah. He killed 5 people, and I don't think there's a lot of leeway for him not doing a significant amount of time in jail, probably the rest of his life in jail. So it does seem as though if you weigh the kind of legal value of a statement like this, of putting out there that he's non-binary versus the kind of cultural impact of it, we saw the cultural impact of it very clearly on Twitter. Immediately, people who were frankly not sympathetic to the people who were killed and not sympathetic to QIA people in general were retweeting it kind of joyously, saying, well, this changes the narrative. This is going to, undermine the cause of liberals. And so I think that people on both sides have to be careful. We saw what happened with the Pulse shooting, where all of the presumptions about what motivated the shooting ended up not panning out. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of time in the world to wait to see what really was the motive here. There's no need to jump to conclusions. To the extent that this man went and targeted this location because he was targeting people of the LGBTQ community, I do think personally on a moral level that makes it worse to hunt down people because of bigotry. But at the end of the day, killing people is horrible. Murder is murder. And I don't want people to overinvest in the notion that it was a hate crime in order to see value in having a conversation about gun control or whatever else can possibly be done, mental health support, whatever needs to be done to prevent tragedies like this happening in the future.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the kind of hate crime designation at all, frankly. Violence is violence, murder is murder. And a lot of hate crime, so for something to count as a hate crime in general, so there has to be an underlying criminal conduct. So it's not just because of the First Amendment, right? It's not just illegal to be hateful or to hold hateful views. Right. It has to be you assaulted someone, you committed some crime, and then it could be if that crime is animated by specific malice against a protected, marginalized group, then you could face additional charges. Maybe you'll get a longer sentence, whatever. Even that honestly makes me uncomfortable from a kind of First Amendment standpoint, because then it starts to get into motivation, and you end up with a lot of crimes where, okay, the person, because people who commit violent crimes tend to be kooky or weird or violent or extreme, might have some extreme views. Then you get into, well, did the extreme view motivate this specific attack? And you start trying to well, what is in their heart? And also we could just ignore courts, judges and juries can sentence someone more aggressively, even without the hate crime designation. They could say, well, you're more culpable because you're a really awful person, or they could have mitigating circumstances or non-mitigating circumstances.
Sure.
We could do all of that without the actual hate crime designations. It's just my
Robby, what do you make of other instances where, for example, you can get amplified charges if you kill a judge or a police officer. And the logic is that because those people are uniquely vulnerable, they're in the line of, direct conflict as a police officer, or they are, because they've investigated people, thrown people in jail, sentenced people, that they could be targeted for retribution by, other folks related to the convicted, that they need the additional protection against being targeted, and so we have a higher charge. I think the logic is similar, whether or not you agree with it.
I would definitely be against that as well. I don't like laws that kind of dictate sentencing practices like this to judges and juries. I want to give judges and juries should have leeway they know the details of every case. It's different. They can look at a specific case and say, well, yeah, maybe in this case, there's some kind of extreme, really horrific element of it that justifies, greater punishment or lesser punishment. That's how the system is supposed to work. We put those decisions in the jury of your peers,
Robby,
the judge, et cetera.
Unfortunately, the reason that some kind of sentencing guidelines have been promulgated in the past, and I agree they can be abused, right? Mandatory minimums, I think, can take away necessary opportunities for leniency from the justice system. But also the reason guidelines were implemented in the first place is that we had outcomes that were wildly biased, where if you kill a white person, you're 4 times more likely to get the death penalty than if you kill a black person, regardless of your race. And I do think that there needs to be some attention paid to how to minimize sentencing disparities. But I do think I agree with you that I don't think that the amplifications on sentences are necessarily, I don't think they necessarily work. I think if you're going to kill a judge, you're going to kill a judge. If you have bias in your heart and are going to murder someone on the basis of their identity, you're going to do that. But it is frustrating, generally speaking, to see people kind of overly invest in the tragedy of this being solely because of people's identity, even though regardless of what the intent of the shooter is, it certainly has had the effect of terrorizing a community and making them feel very unsafe.
Right. The workplace shooting that happened last night, right, is just as horrifying, even if it is motivated by anger in the workplace. Is that really like different or less bad because it's not specific animus against a marginalized? It just gets into a very weird and uncomfortable place for me. Like it's very bad, and these people need to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And I don't need to know what what their views are. Maybe we need to understand them better if we want to combat it, I guess. But from the standpoint of holding these individuals accountable, it just doesn't seem to matter that much. Like, they should be held accountable because these are all terrible, terrible things, and we want to discuss strategies for preventing them. It's a little different than what the mainstream media fixates on, I think.
I like that distinction between accountability and understanding.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we will have more Rising right after this, including Briahna's Radar. Can't wait for that. Stay with us.